I know that look, I said. Zayn was trying to act normal, but I'd known him for too long. 3 years as best friends. Almost 2 years as a couple. Long enough to tell when he was hiding something. You've got something you haven't said.
No.
Yes.
No.
Zayn. Rhett. Are you doing the repeat each other's name thing? Seems to be working. It's not working. It is. I laughed. At least after all these years, some things hadn't changed. Finally Zayn sighed. Fine. I have one more plan. I knew it. I hate that you're always right. I learned from the best. That line was pretty good. I know. This time it was Zayn's turn to laugh. Then he walked over to the couch. Sat down next to me. Pretty close. Close enough that our shoulders touched. Back in the day, just that distance was enough to send my heart racing. Now it was a bit better. Just a little faster than normal. Or quite a lot. I talked to a real estate agent. I blinked. A what? A real estate agent. For what? Looking for a house. For who? Zayn looked at me. I looked back. Took about 3 seconds for my brain to catch up. Wait. Yeah. Wait. Okay. Are you saying? Yeah.
No.
Yes. No way. Way. Covered my face. Zayn. What? Are you asking us to move in together? Finally caught up. I leaned back against the couch. Completely stunned. Not because I didn't want it. Quite the opposite. Honestly, I'd thought about it before. Many times. But in my mind, that belonged to the future. A more distant future. Not right now. I know this is sudden. Zayn said. Somewhat. Very sudden. Right? He laughed. Then his voice turned more serious. I don't want to do long distance anymore. My heart softened instantly. Neither do I. I don't want to see you through a screen every day. Neither do I. I don't want to miss out on the ordinary things. I paused. Ordinary things? Yeah. Zayn looked out the window. Having dinner together. Watching movies. Grocery shopping. Arguing over who takes out the trash. I won't do it. I know. I'll pretend to forget. I know that too. We both laughed. But then, I understood what he meant. Throughout the long-distance time, we'd kept the love alive, but missed out on a life. The small things, the ordinary moments, the things that actually make a home. I want to wake up knowing you're in the next room. Zayn said softly. I want to tell you about my day without waiting for the right time zone. I want to be next to you. Every sentence warmed my chest. Because those were exactly the things I wanted too. 3 months later, Zayn officially moved to Seattle. And we started living together. If you're expecting everything to be perfect like in the movies, sorry, it wasn't. There were problems from day one. What is this? I asked. A suitcase. I know it's a suitcase. I'm asking why you brought 8 of them. 9. Worse. Zayn crossed his arms. I work in fashion. That doesn't explain anything. It explains everything. As a result, the storage room ended up almost entirely taken over. I lost that battle completely. A week later, we had our first fight living together. The cause? The air conditioner temperature. Why is this apartment as cold as the Arctic? I yelled from the living room. Why is this apartment as hot as the desert? Zayn yelled back from the kitchen. You're wearing 3 layers. You're wearing a t-shirt. That's normal. Not for me. The result. We compromised by buying a blanket, which only I ever used. Then there was cooking. At first we thought we were grown-ups. Surely we could take care of ourselves. That was an overly optimistic assessment. My cooking wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. Meanwhile, Zayn could design an entire fashion collection, but would burn pasta, twice, in the same week. Is this even possible? I asked. Apparently so. I think the noodles cried more than I did. I hate you. No, you don't. I laughed. That's definitely not true. Zayn threw the kitchen towel at me, and we both laughed until our stomachs hurt. That was the best part of living together. Not the big moments, but the small ones. The unexpected laughter. The ordinary evenings. The lazy weekend mornings. The times we'd find each other in the same room without even trying. For the first time in many years, I felt like I was living the life I'd only ever dared to imagine before. But it turns out, life still had one more big surprise in store for us. A surprise that began with a small box I accidentally found in Zane's desk drawer. If there's one thing I've learned after years of loving Zane, it's this: don't go opening a fashion designer's drawers without permission. Because inside there could be anything. Fabric swatches, sketches, a receipt from 3 years ago, a button of unknown origin, or a dark blue velvet box, which was exactly what I found that Saturday afternoon. I was looking for tape. That's the whole story. I needed tape, and somehow ended up finding a suspicious little box. Immediately, a thought crossed my mind. No way, definitely not. I looked at the box, then glanced toward the living room. Zane was on the phone with a client, completely unaware of me. My heart started racing, very fast, alarmingly fast. And then, I did what anyone in that situation would do. I closed the drawer. Immediately. Absolutely not. I told myself, I'm not the type to snoop through my boyfriend's things. 5 seconds later, I opened the drawer again. I'll just look. That was the weakest excuse in the history of mankind. Luckily, my conscience won out before my hand reached the box. I closed the drawer again, then fled the office like I just escaped a crime scene. That evening, I tried to act normal. Completely failed. Rhett. You just put salt in your coffee. I looked down. He was right. Oh, something wrong.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. I hated loving someone who knew me too well. Over the next 3 days, that little box haunted me. I tried not to think about it. But the more I tried, the more I thought about it. Because honestly, we'd been together for quite a while. Living together. Building a life together. Surviving long distance together. And, fine, I'll admit it, part of me had imagined an even further future. A house. A small garden. A dog. Maybe 2 dogs. And Zane. Always Zane. For days later, strange things started happening. Olivia showed up in Seattle. Why are you here? I asked. Work. You live in Los Angeles. Work. You're lying. Yes. At least she was honest about lying. Then, my mom called, asking extremely odd questions. Are you free Saturday night? Maybe. Don't make any plans. Why? Not telling. Mom. Not telling. Then she hung up. 2 days later, Zane's mom called too. That had never happened before. How are you, sweetie? I'm good. Good. Yeah. Remember to dress nicely tomorrow night. I froze. Why? Not telling. Then she hung up too. By this point, even I couldn't pretend to be clueless anymore. Something was clearly going on. And somehow, everyone knew about it. Except me. Saturday night, Zane told me to wear my dark blue suit. The nicest one I owned. Why? I asked. Trust me. That phrase has never once put me at ease. It should.
No.
We drove for about 30 minutes. Out of downtown. To a coastal area. The sun was setting. The sky glowing a brilliant orange gold. A scene almost too beautiful to be real. Then the car stopped. I stepped out. And froze. Because in front of me was a small garden facing straight out to the sea. Decorated with golden lights. White flowers. And a lot of familiar faces. My family. Zane's family. Olivia. College friends. People who'd been with us for years. All of them there. I turned to look at Zane. He was smiling. The way someone smiles after finishing a months-long plan. Zane. What's going on? For the first time, the person who was always confident looked nervous. Genuinely nervous. I have a question. My heart immediately sped up. Faster than ever before. Because finally, I understood what that velvet box was. And maybe, I also knew what question he was about to ask. I'd imagined this moment before, many times, during college, back when it was unrequited love, during long-distance nights, when we could only see each other through a screen, on mornings when I'd wake up and find Zane asleep on the couch after working too late. I used to think that if this day ever really came, I'd be calm. Clearly, I'd overestimated myself, because right then, my heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear the waves. Rhett. Zane said my name, just two familiar syllables, but they still moved me like it was the first time. I looked at him, the man who'd walked into my life from a dorm hallway full of suitcases, who used to be my best friend, then became my boyfriend, then became my home, not a place, the feeling of belonging. I prepared a speech, Zane said. I figured, about 7 times. That sounds terrifying. There's a 12-minute version. I'm running away. That's why I cut that one. Everyone around us laughed. So did I. So typical. Even in the middle of proposing, this idiot still made me laugh. Zane took a deep breath, then looked straight into my eyes. Every sound seemed to disappear. No more wind, no more waves, just his voice. The day I first saw you, I thought you were the strangest person I'd ever seen. Laughter rippled around us. I immediately protested. Excuse me? You were sitting in the middle of the hallway with 3 suitcases. 4. See. More laughter. But then, Zane continued, I realized you weren't strange. You were just Rhett. Someone who always helps others. Someone who always shows up when I need him. Someone who always believed in me, even when I doubted myself. I felt my eyes starting to sting. You were the first person who taught me what love means. The first person who made me want to build a future. And the only person who could make me fly halfway around the world just to come home. I heard my mom sniffling somewhere behind me. Honestly, I wasn't doing much better. Then Zane pulled the dark blue velvet box from his jacket pocket. That exact box. I knew it right away, and for some reason, seeing it for real, made every feeling so much more intense. Zane got down on one knee, not too fast, not too slow, but enough to make my entire world stop moving. I know we're not perfect, he said. We were once unrequited, once long distance, once fought over the air conditioner, once burned pasta, twice. I added, twice. Zane confirmed. Everyone burst out laughing. But through all of that, there was never one thing I doubted. That I want to be by your side. Today, tomorrow, and every day after that. His voice trembled slightly. For the first time, the person who was always so strong let his nervousness fully show. And that made the moment feel even more real. Rhett Walker, the love of my life, my best friend, the only model I ever hired by relentlessly pestering him. I laughed through tears. Will you marry me? Finally, the question was asked. For a moment, I looked around. Family, friends, the people who'd witnessed our whole journey. From college, to careers, from California, to New York, to Milan, to Seattle. A long journey, full of turns that, on the day we first met, we never could have imagined. Then I looked back at Zane, still kneeling, still waiting, still looking at me like I was the most important thing in the world. And honestly, I was looking at him the exact same way. Zane, I said. Yeah. Did you really think I'd say no? Laughter erupted across the garden. Zane closed his eyes. Thank God. That's not an answer. Rhett. Okay. I stepped closer, took his hand, and smiled. Yes. Cheers rang out instantly, but by then, I could barely hear any of it, because Zane had stood up, pulled me into his arms, and for the first time in many years, there was no distance left between us. Not a few meters, not thousands of miles, not an ocean, nothing at all, just the two of us, finally choosing the same direction for the future. After the proposal, everything turned into the best kind of chaos. My mom cried. Zane's mom cried too. Then the two of them hugged and cried together. My dad and Zane's dad stood next to each other looking very composed, until I caught both of them secretly wiping their eyes. I saw that, I said. It's the wind. My dad said immediately, there's no wind. There is. There isn't. You just got engaged and you're still arguing with your dad? I laughed. Some things really never change. Olivia was the first to rush over. I win. Win what? I asked. I bet you two would be engaged before 30. Zane looked at her. Who'd you bet with? Your mom. Zane's mom raised her hand. I lost. Everyone burst out laughing. The party went on into the night. There was food, music, old stories retold, and I had to listen more than once to someone bringing up the time I lost my dorm key freshman year. Why does everyone remember that? I groaned. Because it led to this. Olivia answered. She pointed at me and Zane, and for the first time in my life, I couldn't argue with that. A year later, we had our wedding. Not too big, not extravagant, just family, close friends, and the people who really mattered. The venue was near the coast, not by accident, because the sea had been part of so many of our milestones, important conversations, hard decisions, promises, and the proposal. That morning, I woke up earlier than usual, not from nerves, but because I couldn't sleep. I checked the clock. 5:42 a.m. Way too early, but my mind was wide awake. My phone buzzed. A new message. From Zane. You awake? I laughed. Awake? Me too. You should sleep more. Can't. Why? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally. Because today you're marrying me. I stared at the screen and grinned like an idiot, standing alone in the middle of the room. The ceremony took place that afternoon. A gentle sun, a clear blue sky. Everything looked like something out of a dream, but it was a dream that was real. I stood at the end of the aisle, saw Zane waiting up front. A dark suit, that familiar smile. Those gray-blue eyes still made my heart skip the way they did on day one. No, maybe even more now. Because now, I wasn't just seeing the freshman from college. I was seeing the man who'd grown up alongside me, who'd witnessed the successes, the failures, the moments of fear, the moments of strength, all of it. As I got closer, Zane whispered, "You're still handsome." I laughed. "You're standing at our wedding." I know. Is that the first thing you wanted to say?
No.
So what's the first thing? Zane looked at me, smiled, then said, "I love you." That's simple.
No flourish. No complexity.
But those were still always the words I loved hearing most. After the vows, after the rings, after everyone applauded, we officially became a family. A small family that started from a model casting poster. It sounds hard to believe, but it's completely true. Years later, sometimes I still think about that first day. The day I stood in front of Zane's poster. The day I almost turned around and walked away. The day I almost said no. And I always laugh remembering it. Because if I hadn't walked into that studio that day, my life might have turned out very differently. One evening, I was sitting in the living room, Zane working beside me, like thousands of other evenings. I looked at him, the man I loved most in the world, and impulsively asked, "Hey, do you regret hiring me as a model?" Zane looked up, thought for a few seconds, then shook his head.
No.
Why not? He smiled, walked over, sat down beside me, and took my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Because it was the best decision I ever made. I rested my head on his shoulder. Outside the window, the sun was setting. Inside the house, everything was peaceful. Not because life was perfect, but because after all the twists of fate, after college, after the flights, after the distance, after the challenges, we were still here, still choosing each other, every day. And I think that's what happiness really means.